Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Yutet Amud Bet, second line on top of the Amud, starting the Mishnah. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shlema for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, for Nisim Ben Miriam, and for Esther Bracha Bat Chaya. Should all have Refuah Shlema, full recovery, B'ezrat Hashem, Amen. This week's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shea family, Dayan family, and Kohen families. Should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot, B'ezrat Hashem, Amen. So we are starting another piece of what is considered a kasher schach and kasher wall of the sukkah. And here is something that may sound familiar because we have done it earlier on in Daf Zayin as well. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says rather, Ha'oseh sukkato kemin tzrif. If you make your sukkah without a clear schach, but schach on the wall kind of merged together because it's like the huts that the sayadeh ofot, the bird catchers, would make for themselves, which is like a round thing. The entire thing is made out of branches that come from a point on top all the way down, and there's no clear wall or schach. The wall and schach is basically haynuhach, the same thing. Says the Gemara, or that he took the branches, the schach, and you just put it around the kotel. You have the kotel, you have the ground, and you just lay it on top of the wall, and this slant is your wall and also your schach. Same thing. So says the Mishnah, in that case Rabbi Eliezer says it's pasul mipeneh she'en lah gag. Rabbi Eliezer holds that this is pasul. It's not considered an ohel. It's not considered a proper schach because you don't have a wall clearly distinct from your schach. The whole thing runs into each other. And Chachamim say it's kasher. There's no problem with it. Now says the Gemara, Tana, Modeh Rabbi Eliezer, She'im igbiha min hakarka tefach. Rabbi Eliezer agrees that if you have a clear wall or clear schach for one tefach even, right? We all know already by now that one tefach is the minimum shiur of ohel, right? So therefore, if you have a wall on this on the side, in other words, you have the tall wall, which is the schach is slanted and is laying on, but on the bottom you have one tefach that sticks out, and that creates an ohel, clear ohel, and then you have the schach from this one tefach laying on the other wall. That Rabbi Eliezer agrees that's kasher. Or if you have the wall here and you have one tefach attached to the wall sticking out, and then you have the schach, the wall / schach, laying on this one tefach, which is protruding from the wall, that also is fine, because in both cases you have one tefach of ohel here, and on the other case also you have one tefach sticking out from the ground. So both of those scenarios, Rabbi Eliezer holds that is fine. Now, of course, the Tosafot here mention that we obviously are speaking about a case that you could fit a cube of 10 tfachim by 7 by 7 inside this whole thing. That's pashut, right? It goes without saying that you have to have a minimum amount of sukkah that fits inside this srif that you have. In other words, if you have, for instance, the wall and the schach here, there's 7 tfachim in the height of 10 that goes in depth of 7 tfachim as well. So you have a cubic of 7 by 7 in the height of 10 that fits inside this, the minimum shiur of sukkah has to fit inside this sukkah that you have, this srif that you have. So that's what Rabbi Eliezer agrees with, says the Gemara. If you elevated the bottom part of this schach from the ground 1 tefach, or or you distanced it from the wall as it lays not directly on the wall but on something protruding from the wall for the width of 1 tefach, then even Rabbi Eliezer holds that this is kasher. My ta'amaihu de Rabbanan. Rabbanan hold without those 2 tfachim, it's kasher. So what's the reasoning line of Chachamim? Says the Gemara, Shipu'e ohalim ke'ohalim damu. Because Rabbanan hold the slant of an ohel is also considered an ohel. It's not considered not an ohel just because it is on a slant. It is considered the wall, and it is considered the ceiling at the same time. It is no problem. So says the Gemara, Abaye ashkecheh leRabbi Yosef. Abaye finds his Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef, the kankani bekilat chatanim besukkah, that he was sleeping inside the kilat chatanim, right? We spoke about this kilat chatanim before, which was a cover on top of a bed, which would come on a complete slant down to the 2 sides of the bed, and he was sleeping in this kilat chatanim, in this tent, so to speak, inside his sukkah. Well, if that's considered an ohel, then it's a big problem, because you have your own ohel inside the sukkah, so you're really not in the sukkah, you're in this tent, which is a problem. The only way that you could justify Rabbi Yosef sleeping in a kilat chatanim under the schach is if the kilat chatanim is not considered an ohel, which would be whose shita? Well, according to Chachamim, what we just learned, right? The slant is considered an ohel, it's fine, which would be a big problem for Rabbi Yosef. So the only way he could be saved is if he holds like Rabbi Eliezer. But do we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer versus Chachamim? Of course not. So Abaye is scratching his head. Wait a second. How in the world are you relying on Rabbi Eliezer versus Chachamim in a clear machloket in our Mishnah? So he goes to him to bring this up to his attention. He says, Amaleh keman Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi holds like Rabbi Eliezer. Shavkat Rabbanan ve'avdat Rabbi Eliezer. You leave the Shitav Chachamim and you do like Rabbi Eliezer? How in the world? So says the Gemara, Amaleh, Rabbi Yosef said, no, I didn't miss the Mishnah. You missed the Braita. What's happening? Says Rabbi Yosef back to Abaye, Braita ifchatani. The Braita says it exactly the opposite. This Mishnah holds that Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says it's no good, it's not an ohel, and Rabbanan are the ones who say it is an ohel. The Braita says it exactly the opposite. In Braita, the shitot are hafuch. Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says is a good ohel, even without the tefach protruding or coming up, and Rabbanan are the ones who say is no good. Thank you. Right, so that's the comeback of Rabbi Yosef. So obviously, that's beautiful because it explains his shita. It says, you see me sleeping in kilat chatanim under the sukkah, I hold like Rabbanan. But the Rabbanan of the Braita. So what's the obvious follow-up question? You have a Braita, you have a Mishnah. Mishnah was authored by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Braita was authored by Rabbi Chiara Oshaya, right? If you have a stira between a Mishnah and a Braita, generally speaking, which one is more legitimate? Mishnah was accepted more. So therefore, you would go. So the obvious follow-up question is, okay, I understand the Braita has the shitot the other way around, and you'll end up like Chachamim. But who told you to leave the Mishnah and go with the Braita? You should be, if you have a stira between the Mishnah and Braita, you should go with the Mishnah. So says Abaye back to Rabbi Yosef. Amar le, he tells him, oh wait, we didn't read the whole thing. Tani, ifchatani, Rabbi Eliezer machshir vechachamim poslin. Right? Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says the sukkah is kasher, the ohel is kasher, even without the tefach, just slant. And chachamim are the ones who say is pasul, and therefore this kilat chatanim that I'm sleeping on is not considered an ohel, right? So says Abaye, shafkat matnitin ve'avdat kebraita. You leave a Mishnah and you go like a braita, right? So says the Gemara, amale matnitin yechidahi. Says you're correct, but it happens to be that this matnitin is dat yachid. And pay attention, we'll explain this. That means this matnitin itself is the shita of one of the Tanaim. How do I know that? It's not that he's creating this chidush himself. It says, there's another braita that you missed. Abaye, right? The other braita is the Tanya. Ha'oseh sukato kemin sarif. Pay attention well. Our Mishnah basically, if you make your sukkah like a sarif that's coming down, like a round shape without clear schach, coming down from a point to the ground, says the Braita, it's basically our Mishnah. Or you slanted a straight piece of schach from the ground to the wall. In both of those cases, Rabbi Natan Omer, that's a dat yachid. Rabbi Natan, one of the Tanaim, holds that Rabbi Eliezer posel mipnei she'en lah gag v'chachamim machshirim. Right? Our Mishnah, exactly our Mishnah, that Rabbi Eliezer holds is pasul, chachamim holds is kasher. Who is that? Says the Braita, Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Natan holds that Rabbi Eliezer holds like that and chachamim holds like that. And says Rabbi Yosef to Abaye, from the fact that you see, the Braita says Rabbi Natan is the one that holds the layout is Rabbi Eliezer posel v'chachamim machshirim. You see that chachamim of the time of Rabbi Natan disagreed with him. They hold that Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says is kasher, and chachamim are the one that hold is pasul. So Rabbi Natan v'chachamim, halacha is like who? Like chachamim. So therefore, says Abaye, says Rabbi Yosef, if you put all three sources together, our Mishnah and the two braitas that I brought for you, you will notice right away that our Mishnah over here is only the shita of Rabbi Natan, and Chachamim of Rabbi Natan's time, Beit Midrash, disagreed with him. So the halacha would be like this: the first braita that I brought for you that holds that the layout of these shitot is Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says is kasher, and Chachamim are the ones who say it's pasul. So it turns out, says Rabbi Yosef, that I'm sleeping in this kilat chatanim, I hold like Rabbanan, that this, without any proper tefach over here, is considered not an ohel, and therefore I am not sleeping in a tent under the sukkah, I am sleeping under the schach, and we disregard the tent. So right?
Do we say that two braitas override a Mishnah?
It's not two braitas override a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah and a braita that they have the shitot of Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim in an opposite way. The second braita is what shows you that our Mishnah is only the opinion of Rab Natan. And his Chachamim argued with him and held like the first braita, not like this Mishnah. So it gives us the right to assume that the halakha is like the braita in this specific case, not like the Mishnah.
So why did Rabbi Yehuda Nasi pick that version to put in the Mishnah?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. Yeah, it's a good question. So says the Gemara. So this is the reason why we had kilat chatanim being kasher in this specific case. Again, we spoke about naklita, mita, and kilat chatanim at length in the previous dapim. Ayin Sham. Says the new Mishnah, says the Gemara, the Mishnah, Machatzelet kanim gedola. If you have a large mat made out of reeds, made out of bamboos, is considered asa'ah lishchiva mekabelet tum'ah ve'en mesachichin ba. If you made it for sleeping on it, if when you're making the mat, you said, well, Hashem Yechud Kudsha B'Rechu, I'm making this, we want to go on top of the rooftop and sleep, and this is going to keep us clean. It will be the item underneath our mattresses, whatever. Then it's a kli, it's considered a midras, and therefore en mesachichima, it's mekabel tum'ah, and you cannot use it as a schach.
What's a mitras? That means that word?
It means something that's made for sleeping, sitting, riding on, and that is mekabel tum'ah. So says the Mishnah, lesichuch, if you made it for making a schach, if when you're making the mat, you said, oh, I need some schach for my sukkah, and here I am making this mat, then it was made for schach, and it's not mekabel tum'ah, mesachim ba ve'ena mekabel tum'ah. You could use it for schach, it's not mekabel tum'ah, it's all good. Now, before we go to even Rabbi Eliezer, this is Shita of Chachamim. What's the big problem over here? Two problems. A, the Mishnah does not say what's the halacha by machselet ketana. It just says, Chachamim say machselet gedola, a large mat. If you made it for schach, is kasher. If you made it for sleeping on it, is pasur. What's the second problem? Second problem is, what if I didn't make it for anything specific? Right? I didn't make it for anything specific. I just made a mat. I'll see what I'm going to use it for later on. Right? Just making a mat for now. Right? The Reisha of the Mishnah Chachamim sounds like if you made it for sleeping is a problem, stam would be good. And the Seifa sounds like if you made it for schach, if you said L'Shem Yichud for a schach, then it's good, but if you made it stam, is no good. So it contradicts, the diukim of the Reisha and Seifa contradict each other. So we have two problems to deal with without even reading Rabbi Eliezer yet. Just in Shita of Chachamim.
We discussed this earlier. We said it depends in that area. What?
Well, this is what we said, Baal Peh, right? Tarash Baal Peh. Now we're actually learning this in the Mishnah, right? So it says, the Mishnah, again, we read it, now pay attention to these two problems as the Mishnah unfolds. Machatzelet kanim gedola. If you have a large mat that you're making, asa'ah l'shchiva. If you had in mind that I'm making this for sleeping on it, then mekabel tum'ah, ve'en mesachim ba. Then it's mekabel tum'ah, and you can use it for schach. Lesichuch, if you made it for schach, then mesachim ba ve'en mekabel tum'ah. So you have the two problems you have to deal with, right? A, what's the halacha by ketana, by machselet ketana, by small mat? B, what happens with a machzelet that I made without having any specific thought process? Now, let's finish the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, achat ketana, v'achat gedola. I don't care if the machzelet is big, machzelet is small. Asa'ah l'shchiva mekabel tumah. If you made it for sleeping on it, it's mekabel tumah, and you can't use it as schach. Lesichuch, if you made it for schach, then mesachachim ba ve'ena mekabel tumah. Then you could use it for schach, and it's not mekabel tumah. Fine. So let's deal with the Gemara. Hagufe kasha. So this Gemara asks our question. The Gemara. This is a problem. Because Amrat asal shchiva mekabel tumah ve'en mesachim ba. In the beginning, in the Reisha of Chachamim, you say that if you made it for schach, it's good. Sorry, if you made it for sleeping on, it's mekabel tum'ah, and you can't use it for schach. Tama dasa l'shchiva. The reason that it's not good is because you had in mind that I'm going to use this for sleeping. Hastama, but if it was stam, you didn't have any specific mindset. It sounds from the Reisha that it would be good. Stama would be lesichuch. Stam people who make it, they make it for schach. V'hadar tanya, and then afterwards you say, lesichuch mesachechim ba. If you had in mind for schach, then you could use it for sichuch, and it's not mekabel tumah, and it indicates clearly tama de'asa lesichuch. The reason is because you had a mindset of positive. You had a mindset that this is going to be schach. Hastama, but if you had no mindset, no specific mindset, stama is the shchiva. A stam machzelet gedola is for sleeping, which would be a problem. So you have a contradicting diuk from Reisha to Seifa, which is what we explained, right? So the Gemara says, no, halo kasha, it's not a question. Kan begedola, kan beketana. One of them is talking about machzelet ganim gedola, and the other one is talking about ketana. In other words, to explain this clearly, a machzelet gedola is made, generally speaking, for schach. Right? People don't sleep on a massive mat. You want to sleep, you have a small mat, you sleep on it. Right? So therefore, unless you made it for shchiva, it's going to be kasher. But a small one, stam, is considered for shchiva, and it's a problem. So therefore, the Mishnah who says machzelet kanim gedola in the beginning, the first line, only if you made it for shchiva, then is a problem, right? Which indicates stam is good. Stam is made for schach. The next line, when it says asa'ah le sechach, it's talking about the machzelet ketana. It's talking about the small mat. That, if you made it for schach, you had in mind clearly I'm doing schach, then it's kasher. But stam, when stam people make it for no specific mindset, small ones are used for, back then at least, it was used for sleeping on it. So then the Gemara says, okay, that answers the question. By the way, this answers both of our questions, right? Both questions that we had in the Mishnah, based on this ukimta, based on this statement, is going to be now good. Because we know what the halacha is by a machzelet ketana, and we know what the halacha is by machzelet gedola. Let's speak this out. By machzelet gedola, if you made it stam, is good. If you made it for schach, for sure is good. Only if you made it for shchiva is bad. By machzelet ketana, if you made it for shchiva is bad. Even if you made it stam is bad. Only if you made it for schach is good. Right? That's Rabbanan, and the Rabbi Eliezer says doesn't make a difference. Now, that Rabbi Eliezer is going to become a problem now, as we'll see. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, skip the parentheses. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, achat ketana v'achat gedola, as'a l'shchiva mekabelet tum'a ve'en mesachim ba. We have the same line of reasoning, which created a lot of problem for us in Chachamim. Now it's going to create the same problem in Rabbi Eliezer, because what did Rabbi Eliezer say? Machzelet kanim, whether it's small or big. So you can't say the difference is small or big. He says there's no difference. Whether it's small or big, if you made it for schach is kasher, if you made it for sleeping is pasul. What's the obvious question? What if I made it stam? Right? When you tell me if you made it for shchiva is pasul, indicates stam is good. When you tell me if you made it for schach is kasher, indicates stam is bad. So it's good or bad? It's a stira, right? So this question is strong enough that the Gemara now drops the whole pshat that we had and is going to offer two different pshatim, which takes us to the middle of the next Amud. So it says the Gemara like this. Now let's read what we spoke outside. Tamadas al shchiva hastam al sichuch ema sefa. Sefa says as al sichuch besachim ba ve'ena mekabelet tumah. Tamadas al sichuch is only good because you had a positive mindset of using it for schach, but stam would be for shchiva. So therefore, this pshat in the Mishnah does not work. Ella, whenever the Gemara says Ella, Gemara is being chozer. It's retracting what the Gemara said before. Ella, says the Gemara, a new pshat. Amar Rava. Rava offered the pshat like this. A machzelet kanim gedola, a large mat, everybody agrees that if you made it stam, it's for sichuch. Because people usually do not sleep on a large mat, as we said. And that everybody agrees to. Rabbi Eliezer, everyone. That's not debatable. Ki peligi, the machloket of Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim is only in machzelet kanim ketana. So says the Gemara, Ki pligi beketana. Tanakama savar, Tanakama holds, stam ketana lishchiva, that by a small one, if you made it without any mindset, is going to be for shchiva, for sleeping. Rabbi Eliezer savar, stam ketana na milesichuch. Rabbi Eliezer holds, no, even a small one, stam is for sichuch. People don't really sleep on mats. You know, if you had no mindset, it's for sichuch. Now, how do we read the Mishnah? Right? This is the halacha that they both hold, says Rava. How do you read this in the Mishnah? Machzelet hakanim gedola. We're going through the Mishnah, remember. The first line of Mishnah says, Machzelet hakanim gedola, as'al shchiva mekabelet tum'ah, ve'en mesachim ba. If you made the gedola for sleeping on it, then it's no good, right? Because you had an active negative mindset, right? But anything short of that is going to be good. Tama da'asa'ah l'shchiva. The reason that's not good is because you made it for sleeping on it. Hastama, but the stam would be na'asa kemisha asa'ah l'sichuch. In other words, when the Gemara says, when the Mishnah says asa'ah l'sichuch mesachim ba, you have to put a sentence into it. That means asa'ah stam na'asa kemisha asa'ah l'sichuch. Stam is like you made it for sechach u'mischachim ba, and it's going to be good. So says the Gemara. Skip the entire parenthesis. Va'ata Rabbi Eliezer lememar, and Rabbi Eliezer is coming to say, achat ketana v'achat gedola, whether it is large or it is small, stama keshera lesichuch. Stam is going to be kasher for schach, right? Now you know this. I said whether it's big or small because that's how it should be, right? Big is pashut. Small is the chiddush, right? And that's how Rashi says the Gemara always talks. Whenever the Gemara says either this or that, the Gemara always says the least chiddush first, and then even this. Whether this and even this would be. Now, if you want to say it that way, according to Rava, which one you should say? Say achad. You have to say the other way around. You have to say achad gedola v'achad ketana. But what's the language of Rabbi Eliezer say? Achad ketana v'achad gedola. And this becomes a question the Gemara asks on Rava. Amane Abaya asks Rava, Ihachi, if your pshat in the Mishnah is correct, Rabbi Eliezer omer achat ketana v'achat gedola v'achat ketana mi baile. He should have said achat gedola v'achat ketana, because ketana is the much bigger chiddush over here. That even a ketana stam is made for schach. So therefore, mikoach this question, from this question, the Gemara suggests another answer. Ve'od, but another question too. Ki pligi begedola ude pligi, ve'Rabbi Eliezer rechumra the Tanya. This is really a question in machzelet hakanim gedola. I lost track of time. This is really a question, a machloket in a machzelet hakanim that's big, and says the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer lechumra. Rabbi Eliezer is the one that is more machmir. The Tanya, we learned, machzelet hakanim gedola mesachechim ba. If you have a large machzelet, you could use it as schach. And Rabbi Eliezer holds im ena mekabelet tum'ah mesachechim ba. You see that Rabbi Eliezer, even in machzelet gedola, he argues and he says, well, it's only if it's not mekabel tum'ah. So even machzelet hakanim gedola could be mekabel tum'ah, and the machloket really is even in Masechet Takanim Gedolah. Unlike what Rava wanted to say, that by Gedolah nobody disagrees, the only disagreement is by Ketana, says Abaye, you see from this Braita that they are arguing the same way in Masechet Takanim Gedolah as well. So these two questions is going to cause the Gemara to offer, in the name of Rav Papa, another final answer to this read, the cryptic read of our Mishnah, which Bezat Hashem we will continue and we will study together tomorrow morning.
Really what they're arguing